I would like to welcome you to this session, where the theme is energy efficiency first. My name is Kristin Kvellheim, and I'm the head of FME ZEN, the research center on zero-emission neighborhoods. And together with me, I have Røkke, who is head of HighEFF. In this session, we will dig into the huge and complex theme of energy efficiency. And to us, it's kind of a mystery that energy efficiency is not even more debated. When we know that there is this huge potential, both in buildings and neighborhoods, as well as in the industry.
So, maximizing utilization of all our resources is of crucial importance to achieve the green transition. Energy in particular, with the current energy situation that we know about here in Norway and also in Europe. Energy efficiency measures contributes to value creation for the industry, which is the beauty of it, and for buildings, still a beauty for it. And in addition to the society as a whole, if you can make the society more efficient. And also to increased energy security. But it is not either or, one or the other. We need to explore all these measures to be able to strengthen our energy security and prepare for the low carbon and no emission society. Also now, as a result of the COP28 agreement, Norway is committed to, and I quote, put the principle of energy efficiency as the first fuel at the core of policymaking, planning, and major investment decisions. And this makes this session and the ambitions for ZEN and HighEFF even more relevant, right?
Absolutely. Energy efficiency is a conflict-free measure that will free energy to be used for other purposes and hence could have a strong impact on reducing climate gas emissions as well as improving energy security. Not to mention the advantages for the consumers, such as lower energy bills and better indoor climate, for instance. Talking about value creation, we see that ZEN has spurred creativity, resulting in innovations and spin-offs, such as new products, standards, and new companies. And more is on the way, and more is needed. One of the most important benefits of energy efficiency is actually job creation, according to the IEA. And we have calculated in ZEN that new green jobs only in the building sector can count to more than 20,000 if we really dig into the potential. Also, investing in energy efficiency is empowering local communities and is one of the most effective ways to fight energy poverty. Petter, in HighEFF, you have looked at excess heat and the energy efficiency potential that can be better exploited in the industry. What have you learned?
Well, what to see is that Norwegian industry is known as a global leader when it comes to clean and efficient production of their products. But nevertheless, there's still huge amounts of energy available. We have learned that there's a huge potential in utilizing the surplus heat from industry. We estimated 20 terawatt hours being available, which is about 10% of the land-based energy consumption in Norway. If we build a new data center, as in Skien, which is quite debated, without utilizing the waste heat, that adds on 10% extra just for the first step. 2 terawatt hours more energy not being utilized if we're not taking measures for that. We have several examples of collaboration between industrial actors having a surplus of energy and those in need of energy, particularly related to that heat. Approximately 50% of the energy being used is for heating and cooling purposes. So utilizing waste heat, surplus heat, to heating is more efficient than using electricity for heating. Within HighEFF, we have developed expertise, technology, and solutions for increasing industrial energy efficiency. It can be like heat pumps, thermal energy storage, heat exchangers, novel processes, and so on. And we have learned that industrial sectors are working together can learn from each other when it comes to these technologies, but also looking into the business models, what is relevant for those. And we'll hear more about that later in the session. But further to this, collaborating with stakeholders among the energy companies, district heating systems, is of particular interest for realizing the potential, which is also relevant for FME ZEN.
Yes, indeed. In ZEN, we are collaborating across sectors, in particular the building sector and the energy sector, and with actors from both the public and the private sector. But even within the same sector, such as the energy sector, for instance, the district heating companies and the energy companies, there is a need for a better understanding of each other's business models, and also a need to develop new business models. And the FMEs provide a good framework also for this. Of course, the energy efficiency potential in the building mass is huge. We talk about 13 terawatt hours in the short run and 40 terawatt hours in the longer run. And to realize this potential, we need to develop more solutions for energy renovation of existing buildings, among other things. And there will be a need for measures such as competence building, investment support and green loans, as well as a coordinated effort to achieve this and realize this potential. But also, we know that the building sector can be used for energy flexibility purposes, potentially saving large investments in the grid. And energy conversion from electricity to thermal heating is another measure that would free electricity for other purposes. Local energy production is not the topic of this session, but has of course also a potentially huge impact combined with innovative storage solutions. These are but a few examples.
And with that said, very happy to be standing here together with you and Kristin, and also that FME HighEFF and ZEN can highlight this topic, conflict-free energy. But to dig more into details, we have a more professional chair of this session that will lead us through it. So I will just leave the floor to you, Stein Mortensson, which you probably met you heard in the previous session, and will take us through the program. So please welcome Stein. Applaud for you.
Thank you. And of course, by moderating, I am your moderator, and that includes taking your questions into consideration. And we have a technological answer for that. Slido, have you used it before? Are you shy still? We've been here for more than an hour now. Do we have some slides showing? Yes, we do. Log on to slido.com, and the entry code is hashtag and FME. So you can post a question there, and we'll include it in the panel discussion at the end of the session, the last half of it. So we have quite a good time to dive into this together. Does this solve any questions you have to the technology? Has anyone tested it, tried to log on and see if it works? Yes, thumbs up. I come from the humanities, so we have 10 thumbs showing these kinds of events. What have we, the industry, achieved, and what is the remaining potential? Petter was mentioned his opinion piece in the Norwegian Business Daily, Dagens Næringsliv. Google is coming, and they're taking our power. That's one part of the fence. And the other part is, wow, great, the future is digital. Let's live off that. And of course, there should be room for everyone. And most frustrating part of watching everything that unfolded during the energy crisis was, why aren't you discussing the most low-hanging fruits? This is really what we're delving into here. And I have the joy now of introducing one big industrial player here in Norway, which is in a global scale. I think you'll have to answer for that, but the most climate-friendly producer of aluminum, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. If I say so, you can say. And he's living proof that not every wise education is from Trondheim. He comes from Lund's Tekniska Høgskola, where he holds a Master's of Environmental Engineering. He is the head of technology in hydroenergy, and there he is involved in several energy technology-related initiatives, including heat recovery from the plants. Please welcome, everyone, Anders Westin. You can use the stairs if you like.
Perfect. Let's see. We have this here. Okay, thank you for the invitation to come and speak on this very important topic of energy efficiency. I have a few slides I'm going to go through. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history, the historic sort of initiatives that have been made on energy efficiency in the aluminium sector, but then also going to focus quite a lot on the future. First of all, most of you are probably aware of what company Hydro is, but I want to mention that Hydro is both a global aluminium producer, fully integrated, but we're also a global energy company. Let's see if is it my... Okay. I'll use this one. Hello? Yes. Yes, so we're both an aluminium company and a global energy company. And of course, the backbone of our energy business is the hydropower plants in Norway, but we're also developing new wind and solar in the Nordics and in Brazil. But why I mention this is that I think we have a great starting point to work with energy efficiency, since we both have the sort of energy competence side of it, but we also have the industrial competence of our plants. So, I want to show you this, although a bit outdated, as you can see of the colors and so on of this graph. It shows a great picture of historic success of working with energy efficiency in the aluminium sector and for our plants. So this shows the specific energy consumption in our electrolyzers. And as you can see, we have already captured a lot of the energy efficiency, and we would have been using a lot more of Norway's power if we haven't worked with this. But what we can also see is that the curve is flattening out. And now to sort of reach something more here, it becomes very difficult. And of course, this process has also been characterized by some step changes in technology, for instance, moving from the Söderberg process to Hallero, and to where we are today with the Karmøy technology plant, where we have roughly 12.3 kilowatt hours per kilogram aluminium. But this also means that as this curve is flattening out, other things to work on becomes more important. So we have made some potential studies in our energy mapping of our plants, looking at what could we potentially do with different sort of excess residual energy that we have in our plants. And what we can see is that there's quite a lot of amounts that can be sort of reduce the energy consumption when it comes to some specific systems in our plants, where our sort of both the lighting, the compressors, how we manage them, and also the compressed air that we're using. However, I want to talk a little bit about this part, which is the really big elephant when looking at this. And as I mentioned, and as we have been discussed and heard a lot about in recent discussions with excess heat, this is a difficult topic, because this, for one time, involves other parties as well, except Hydro. The other things we can work on, and we can find technical solutions for it and be in charge. But these ones, we need to collaborate with other businesses. And that's what makes it hard. But I think looking at this elephant, I mean, the elephant has found a good way to get rid of the heat through long evolution. And now we have also been around for a long time, the aluminium sector. So the question is, can industry also find a good way and a clever way to find use for this heat? Well, I think there's great potential. Here's a graph showing the sort of heat demand in industrial sectors in EU. And of course, there's quite a lot of heat demand, right? And there's a lot of heat demand also in lower temperatures. So it looks like there is sort of a potential here. But the question is, can we utilize all of this? And it's a lot of challenges connected with bridging this sort of demand with our heat consumption. And one thing, of course, is that a lot of these processes shown here, basically all of it is still using fossil fuels. And all these processes are designed for the use of fossil fuels, And I think a great sort of issue here that we have identified, of course, is the mutual understanding between the sort of excess heat suppliers, for instance us, and the industry. Because when looking at their sort of consumption, many of their processes, for instance, for drying processes and so on, could have been perhaps designed in a different way, using lower temperature heat. But of course, they have had these fossil fuels where temperature perhaps haven't been a big issue, and they have designed their plant for the lowest cost. And we don't know exactly what that demand could look like. And on the other hand, we haven't maybe been too good at communicating our excess heat, and also what we could potentially do to raise the temperature that we have available. And I think there's a really potential here for better communication and cooperation. And then, of course, we also have these challenges coming back with Enoch paradox, and that goes for both the one to convert and using excess heat, but also for us to deliver it. Of course, at high energy prices, you could sort of find it beneficial to do this kind of heat recovery things, but then you're typically constrained on sort of investment capacity. And on the other hand, around, when you have the low sort of prices, it's challenging to calculate this. And I think for these things, and a lot of the other challenges, there is room for both collaboration between industries, but also for research centers and so on to come in and give this arena for collaboration. So we're a part of HighEFF, and we're planning to also be a part of hopefully the new FME ZEFF. And I think that's a great example where we can communicate with each other, where researchers can also help us to design systems that are sort of optimized for heat recovery. And then also public funding is an important part of this, because it's a lot of risk. We need to put infrastructure in the ground, and we have a big reliance of each other. And I think public funding and so on can help to reduce some of that risk. So then I'm going to go through the sort of last slide here, because I think we need a sort of a plan, a long-term plan, both to get going, to grow the heat recovery, and then also how we could potentially glow in the future by really making a difference and using a lot of the excess heat. So the first phase, where I believe we are in now, right now, is to sort of map what we can see already around our plants. You know that our plants are typically in areas where not a lot of people live, so there's no big district heating grid around. But we do find some sort of potential use cases for the heat in the existing buildings. So that we're working with right now, and also within collaboration in HighEFF and others. And then we need to think about tomorrow. How can we actually grow this? And because of the remote location, we really need to attract new industry to locate near our plants. Because as I showed, we have vast amounts of excess energy, and we're not going to come close to using a large portion of that without sort of getting new industry that have a high heat demand near our plants. And I think first phase, when we're attracting new, we need to think about existing industry that have a market, that have a competitive advantage of still being located in Norway, but could have it even better of being having access to reliable, cheap, and also low emission excess heat. But then we also need to have the third part in our head at the same time, the future. We need to think about what kind of new industries could develop in Norway, and that could be new industry that doesn't have an existing market today. But it's very hard to start with that, because that's going to give I think it's not going to work, because we need to have sort of financial security and so on, knowing that this business is going to be there for 10, 20, 30 years and so on. So all this needs to come together. So I'm going to try to wrap up now, and I'm going to stop here with we are doing all of this sort of mapping, trying to find the industries together with the SINTEF and NTNU and so on. But one thing that I know is that it's the industries itself that have the demand, that know the best what they need. So I encourage everyone to sort of contact us in Hydro and contact me or any of my colleagues and so on, and see if we can discuss collaboration in any way if you do have a demand for heat. So yes, gonna stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anders. And I really think we're onto something here. Thank you for addressing the elephant in the room. Sweden sends us environmental engineers. We send you participants for the Eurovision Song Contest. It's a great transaction.
Oh, that's a good way. Thank you.
We'll hear more from you later, and not least in the breaks, Anders, where you'll be available to answer to anyone who has an invitation to collaborate more with Hydro. We should have had Skanska on the stage now, but illness happens, but we are fortunate to have a speaker with a broad industrial experience next. As you know, one of the organizers of this event is the Research Center on Zero-Emission Neighborhoods in Smart Cities. It has a predecessor with zero-emission buildings, and Inger Andresen was the leader of the research on pilot and demonstration buildings within that research center. She is a professor of integrated energy design and a coordinator of European Green Deal project Climate Positive Circular Communities. She also teaches within the National Master Program in Sustainable Architecture at NTNU. And she has said yes to both bringing her academic person and her industrial experience with her as well onto the stage. So she's going to merge talking about what she was originally going to speak about with something of a dip into the Skanska and Asplan Viak experience as well. Welcome, Professor Inger Andresen.
Thank you. Yes, unfortunately, my friend and earlier colleague, Tor Helge Dokka, was sick today, so he could not participate, but he sent me some slides that I will present, and I also worked very close with him in the past, both as a part of Skanska, but also as a researcher. So I hope it will be good enough for him. So I'm going to start with this report that Skanska was a part of, and it was delivered by FME ZEN last year. And it's a report on the potential of energy efficiency in the building mass in Norway towards 2030 and 2050. And it's a very in-depth study. There has been several studies on this topic before, but this is going in more detail and having a very detailed building stock analysis, energy performance predictions, and also cost-benefit analysis. And there, Skanska, of course, with their experience, played a major role. So the main conclusions from this study was that there is a huge potential for energy efficiency in the building mass in Norway. But of course, starting with the baseline, if we continue as in business as usual, as we have done for several years, the energy consumption will rise. And it will rise by 2 terawatt-hours in 2030 and 4 terawatt-hours in 2050. So we have to reverse this trend. And by having high ambitions, but also looking at the realistic potential of the building mass in the years to come, we found, or the report concluded that there is an ultra-green scenario where we can reduce the energy consumption or demand by 13 terawatt-hours in 2030, and as much as around 40 terawatt-hours in 2050, which is actually a halving of the current energy demand in buildings, as you can see on this picture here. So this is the business as usual. It will grow if we don't do anything. And it will not happen by itself. I will get back to this at the end of my presentation. But just a very quick picture of how much 13 terawatt hours are and 42 terawatt hours. If we compare to windmills, it's actually 1,100 windmills, 13, and 13 times the Storheia wind park, which is the biggest in Norway. And 3,400 windmills is 42 terawatt hours. So it is a lot of energy, actually. Then to the experiences of Skanska. Skanska has been a main partner in FME ZEB and FME ZEN, and will also be a partner in the hopefully coming research center, ZEN+. And they have, since the start of ZEB, they have been very active and realized very many ambitious projects, and they started by the Powerhouse Alliance, which is Plus Energy Buildings, also incorporating materials, back in 2014 as a spin-off of the ZEB project. And then afterwards they realized many projects, and I will just show quickly some of them. This is the first Powerhouse building, which was actually a renovation, so it is a very important reference building for renovations in Norway, I think, because they showed that it was possible to renovate a building from the 80s to a Plus Energy building. And it was heavily documented, and it was a very big success, actually. Then in the coming years, the Powerhouse Alliance produced more, mostly new buildings, schools, office buildings. Here you can see a school in Drøbak and this building in Trondheim that you all probably know. And their newest project is Powerhouse Telemark in Skien, and a new one, a dwelling project, which is going to be built, or is in the planning now in Trondheim, to the left here. So Skanska has sort of participated in the research and brought it into practice, and used their science-based research very much in this project to be able to realize these very ambitious projects that nobody actually at the beginning thought were possible to realize in a quite cost-efficient manner. Of course, they had some backing from Research Council and from Enova, because there were some significant risks in the beginning, and still is for the most important or the most ambitious projects. And this shows just a graph, because all the projects have been tested and documented during monitoring and evaluation, and we show that the potential of reduction is about 70 to 80% compared to new common buildings. So this is a very large potential, actually, that we should implement in more buildings. So to sum up the Skanska experiences, and this is the recommendations from the report that I showed in the beginning on the potential, and they are, of course, behind these recommendations from the ZEN Center. There are four main ones. There are actually more, but the four main ones are: first, to set clear goals, both short-term and long-term, for the reduction of energy in the building stock, and of course to follow it up. Then to provide for potential financial incentives, because although some of the solutions are cost-efficient, on a long term they are not on the short term, and there are several other reasons that they are not being implemented. So the recommendation is to provide support for about 30 to 35% of the extra cost. Then also to back it up with green loans, especially towards low-income groups in dwellings. Then the fourth one is to coordinate, because there's no different regulations, and they are not coherent enough. The technical regulation TEK, the energimerkeordningen, and the taxonomy, which is coming now, it is not. They are not saying the same thing, or they are making it a little bit difficult for the industry to have it coordinated. And at last, to put in place a gradually more ambitious regulations for both new buildings and for existing ones. So that was the Skanska hat. Now I'm going to change my hat to NTNU and SEB and SINTEF. ZEN and HighEFF, sorry. And I'm going to, my title is The Barriers for Realizing the Potential and How to Get Things Done, but I'm actually not going so much into the barriers, more into the solutions or how to overcome the barriers, because it takes a lot of time to talk about a lot of barriers, and it's also a little bit not so encouraging in a way. The recommendations are based on many years of research in SEB and ZEN, but also we have now several EU projects where we cooperate, which have sprung out of ZEN, and we are very much focusing on demonstrating and evaluating real-life pilot projects. And these are some of the reports that go specifically on barriers and drivers for energy-efficient buildings, also on ZEN, so it's not only energy efficiency, but also local energy production. And I'm not going to go through all of them, of course, there's no time, but you can read them. And I'm going to very quickly sum up some of the main conclusions based on all these reports. This report, which is one of them, has sort of categorized the recommendation into different actors, because there's different things that different actors and stakeholders can do to overcome the barriers. So we need all different stakeholders to chip in and do their part. So the developers and real estate companies, 3 of the main recommendations for them are to set ambitious goals and connect them to their different sustainable business models. There's a lot to do there. Then to contribute to improve competence among suppliers via their power of procurement. And then to engage the occupant and the users more to contribute to the development of attractive neighborhoods. I'm going to go a little bit back on that later. Then the next recommendation is towards the solution suppliers. This is a big stakeholder group, many different ones. I just picked 3 of them here. And then first of all is to challenge the existing market through innovative business models and front-running solutions like Skanska has done, actually. They have driven the market with their alliance also, the Powerhouse Alliance. Then embrace new technologies and digitalization. I will also get a little bit back to that, but of course we are the building industry is a little bit can be a little bit slow on this, but there are a lot of good suppliers and technologies that have taken digitalizations into their businesses. And then to form alliances across multidisciplinary borders and across different materials and markets. And we have seen that in the 7 ZEN projects, that we put together a broad team of actors across the whole value chain of the industry, and this makes a big difference. Then the last stakeholder group is the public authorities, which of course maybe is the most important one. They have a lot of power, and they can do different things. They can work on the codes and the regulations to promote innovation and update them frequently. For example, the Tech 17, it has a big influence on the market, so that should really take into account what we have found out in the centers and lead innovation through codes and regulation. Then support R&D and promote science-based knowledge, of course, as we saw in the Skanska presentation. Their way of transforming the market has been very much science-based. And then finally, to promote demonstration and light-up projects. We see that these projects are very important to drive the market, and they're very physical, so people can easily understand that things work through these kind of projects. Then I also included some reflections from EU projects, which also ZEN has worked on neighborhoods, but we are also working on neighborhoods approach in several other EU projects. And we found that the neighborhood approach is actually very powerful because it enables synergies both in cost, so you can scale up scale up the solutions through a neighborhood because there's more bigger market in a way, and then you can also enhance or utilize the collective social potential. We have something called social renovation. So you look at a whole neighborhood and how to upgrade it both technically and socially. So there's a lot of unharvested potential there. Yes. And then the aggregation of the project, as I mentioned, is enabling industrial renovation processes with digitalization and prefabrication, for example, so you can roll out the solutions more quickly on a larger scale. And then also the last point was to empower the local community to take an active role in the energy transition. Finally, I would like to take some points from the EU legislation, and EU is actually a leading star in developing the market, I think, with their legislation. It's very ambitious and it's very good and it's science-based, and we should look more to the EU, I think, to include in our local policies. And if we look at the latest EPBD recast and the performance of building directive, they are coming with some very good and ambitious recommendations and requiremements for the member states. We should reduce our average primary use in the residential building stock by 16% by 2030 and 20 to 22 by 2035, and this links back to what I showed in the beginning. It follows sort of the curve that I showed that is possible with our study. So we can not easily, but we can incorporate these rules with some efforts. Then they also mentioned one-stop shops because it's sort of difficult there's a transition cost for the buyers or the end users in the market to get access to the solutions. So they encourage one-stop shops, so to provide independent advice on energy performance of buildings and also to accompany integrated district renovation programs. And then they also have a recommendation on Class A plus buildings, so the energimerkeordningen should be upgraded to also include Class A plus, which is 20% lower than the maximum threshold for the zero-emission building requirement that will come into force in 2030. Then there's 3 more EU legislations that I would like to point your attention at. And it is to provide financial measures. It also says that the government should provide financial measures, in particular targeting vulnerable households, because even though the measures are sometimes cost-effective, people don't have the ability to invest. And then they have also, again, the focus on technical assistance through one-stop shops, and especially, again, through vulnerable households. And then finally, they point to integrated financing schemes, which promote incentives for deep and staged deep renovations. So renovations in the future will be much more important in the years to come. Then I will sum up with this circle. As you know, everything is circular and everything is connected. So I have picked out 8 main focus areas to focus on in the years to come. And that is, of course, deep energy renovation. When people renovate, you have to ensure that they do proper deep energy renovation. Industrialization and digitalization will be much more important, especially on the neighborhood scale. Targeting energy poverty, we must ensure that everybody can take part in this energy transition. Collaboration on sharing, also the neighborhood approach, the community approach, it will be most cost efficient, and it will help the social aspects of the transition. The neighborhood approach is connected to this. Then, of course, smartness and flexibility, because the energy system around us is changing, so we need to adapt our buildings to respond to that and to take advantage of that. Then new business models like the one-stop shop that I mentioned will be important. We need to update our laws and regulations and to have good financial incentives. And that was the 8th one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Let's head into the social sciences and how they view the barriers for realizing the potential and how to get things done. Our next speaker is a trained political scientist and has a doctorate in science and technology studies from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. She is concerned with the interaction between technological change and social development. She joined NTNU Social Research and Studio Apertura in 2017. Since then, she's been working with organizational research in a number of different areas, amongst them green transition, digitalization, innovation, safety, and public health. All of those answered in 10 minutes. Let's see when we invite Lucia Liste Munoz to the stage. Welcome.
Thank you, Stein, for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to be here presenting some of the work that NTNU Social Research has done in HighEFF. It is a pleasure to be here today presenting a hot topic. Basically, I'm going to talk about how we can, or barriers to use surplus heat, and how we can overcome those barriers, so basically enablers. So it was in 2017 or 2017 that we conducted a review of barriers and enablers for energy efficiency. And what we found out, it was that most of the taxonomies and models were focusing a lot on the technological barriers and financial barriers, but there was not much about other kind of barriers, like societal barriers. And also, like, they were focusing a lot on intra-organizational, and it was not a lot of knowledge about what happens outside of the organizations. Furthermore, there was very little on the Norwegian context, on the barriers that Norwegian industry was facing when trying to implement those energy efficiency measures. So basically what we did was to conduct several workshops with industrial partners in HighEFF to learn more about their experiences. And all the insights, we kind of put them together into a new taxonomy that was looking at both social and technical aspects, and also like internal and external ones. And I'm a social scientist, so I'm not going to say anything about the technical ones, but I can mention that, of course, uncertainty is always a huge barrier when someone is going to start with a new project, or lack of competence to map and understand opportunities. Those are very, very important barriers. But I'm more concerned today with the external ones, those that happen outside of the organization or the companies. And particularly, I would like to highlight today, and it has been already said several times, I would like to highlight the importance of the policy framework that the importance of these policy frameworks and instruments have for facilitating this kind of energy collaborations. So basically, like green taxes, incentives, and different and legislation can have a huge impact on the adoption of energy efficiency measures. And it is important not to focus too much on barriers, but of course trying to find enablers to overcome those barriers. And that was our intention by doing this review. And basically, inspired by what we learned, we decided to kind of write a handbook to help industry, HighEFF partners, and other actors when implementing those energy collaborations. Yeah. So we wanted to just help with kind of to enhance creative thinking, and the focus was on basically on low-hanging fruits. So those collaborations that are technically feasible and economically feasible. Yeah, and what we suggest are like basically 5 different stages. The first one, the stage 0, runs through the whole process of establishing collaboration and running collaboration, and it's like a fundamental preparation and consideration, and that involves working to increase awareness and culture of collaboration in the companies. Also thinking about what is the role of the company in the local community. And Alcoa, Mosjoen, and Elkem Salten are really good examples of industries that have a huge value for the local communities in which they are placed. Cultures and values are also important to foster innovative thinking. It's also important, and also the external relations. What we were talking, we need to better understand what is the needs of the supplier and the needs of the ones that are going to receive that heat. The first step, then the second, like the stage 1, it's finding opportunities and possibilities, and is find out how the utilization of surplus heat can be valuable. And to do so, it's not just about focusing on the technical and the economical, but be creative and searching for other elements that can contribute to make the agreement more profitable. Social value is one of them. So it's important to, for instance, looking for public incentives that can really help to make the agreement profitable, but also like be more creative and think like, oh, maybe we could share like canteen services, and then that would come into the equation, right? The stage 2 is mapping potential stakeholders, and Anders has already mentioned how important it is to understand the needs, right, and what is available. So basically, it's about mapping potential industries that could need that heat. Again, another from HighEFF, another good example is like what Elkem did, or they share the heat with a rose producer, and also like use the surplus heat to heat the football field. So those are really good examples to learn about. And also, but it's not about just other industries. It could be also public buildings like schools, hospitals, or private actors like residential areas and so on. So it's about trying to map what is possible. And of course, location, it's a huge thing here. And we know that some of the industries having this surplus are kind of in remote place and so on. But still, like, it's about thinking all these things. Stage 3 is negotiation between partners, and that the kind of contract elements that can be included in this negotiation process are ownership, prices, add value, and spillover effects, regulations, termination, etc. I'm not going to go very into detail. I will just mention some. And the last stage is implementation and operation. And 3 aspects are really important for the successful implementation and operation of those energy collaborations. And this is understanding, anchoring, and commitment. Understanding is establishing a common or a shared understanding of the project and what we are going to do this and what is the aim and so on. So making sure that both parties have a shared understanding, anchoring in each of the organizations that are going to perform these energy collaborations, and commitment is making sure that everybody involved is on board. So basically, this was just a teaser. For those of you who have interest in learning more about this handbook, you can visit it by clicking in this QR code or by checking the HighEFF webpage where the deliverable is there. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to have a panel discussion right now, but we also have time to answer a few other questions that have come in through Slido. Is this one working now, their technical stuff? So, oh yes, Anders, you get to enjoy the microphone once again when answering a question from the audience. Question for Hydro. Could it be possible or advantageous to use excess heat for potentially blue in hydrogen production?
Yes, I mean that could be possible. I think we're also it's nothing sort of. We're also looking at sort of CCS opportunities for our plants, and of course heat integration in those kind of processes is absolutely essential. We have to look at the processes and what we can extract of heat, because the thing is here we are working a little bit with getting a more detailed understanding of the heat resources we have ourselves and to what temperature level we could potentially get them to. And that's still a big uncertainty. And if that is sort of could serve that function, yes, that would be, of course, an interesting opportunity as well.
Okay, thank you. Now let's invite the panel up on stage, because we actually have a place to invite them now. Let's introduce, no trees were hurt when working on the script for today's session, so I just need to flip screens. Maren Aschehoug Esmark, Section Head at the Norwegian Water Resources and Energy Directorate. Welcome, Maren. Tone Tellevik Dahl, the CEO of Norsk Eiendom, where she has been employed as Managing Director since July 2020. And before that, a more than 20-year stint as a politician in Oslo, so you know a few things about how to run a big city. Anna Barnwell from Enova, a marketing manager for service provision and use, and the director for electro and energy at Norsk Industri, Hans Petter Rebo. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
There's an applause here. People are really excited to hear from you. And now let's have an engaging and dynamic half hour together, because you've been really looking forward to this, I know. You're all on your toes, about to share your insights and what's going on with the government entity processes, and what do the members strive for achieving. We've heard about, well, that's a holy moly experience, isn't it? Hearing about all of this potential for energy efficiency. So let's try to get there within the next half hour. Should we start with you, Maren? You, the Norwegian Water, well, I don't even remember.
Water Resource and Energy Directorate.
Yes. Not everyone has that in their home country. What's that? And can you tell us about the role you have in this society, and what are ongoing processes?
So how many days do I have?
2 minutes, 3?
No, thank you, yes. No, the NVE, which is the Norwegian abbreviation for us, has quite a broad role in the Norwegian society, and it is almost the same as the Norwegian Energy Act. The purpose there, it is to ensure that energy is generated, converted, transmitted, distributed, and used rationally and in the best interest of the society. And in addition to that, we also have the responsibility for floods and landslide
Yeah.
preparedness, yes.
So,
And
for example, you had the happy experience of getting to propose different areas to have land-based wind 5 years ago, and not you personally, but NVE did, and you really got the societal debate up and running on that topic.
yes, it's our role to do the public engagement and make sure that all different interests are heard in the processes of ensuring or setting new production, both wind and, of course, hydropower, and also now solar is getting more and more up.
But this topic is conflict-free, I presume.
Oh, yes.
Let's be energy efficient together. What's ongoing processes that we can follow?
Well, I would say that the year 2023 and 2024 is game-changing in energy efficiency in Norway and in Europe. The EU has just set their new energy efficiency directive, which has just been on hearing here in Norway as well. And the Norwegian government launched an action plan on energy efficiency in October last year. And it sets out measures for the whole economy and for all sectors. And we have in our instruction letter to NVE, we got quite a few new tasks that we will coordinate and lead on energy efficiency.
Yeah. So, if you work in the public sector in Norway, each year the minister writes you a letter and says, "This year you need to focus on this, in addition to everything you do from before."
Yes.
So, you will not get any more resources. Is usually the language as well. Tone Telvikdal, you represent all of these buildings.
Yeah, property owners.
Yeah, the property holders that are now looking to build new buildings, not so popular lately because of the interest rates and everything, but also the improvement of the existing building mass. What are your members looking for? There's a lot of costs to be cut.
Yeah, well, we are looking for a more economical way to do energy efficiency, because when you're a building owner, the commercial buildings in Norway, our owners, our members own them and build them and rebuild them and so on, and also they build the large residential housing projects, but let's focus on the commercial buildings now, because our members, they actually do the investment in energy efficiency, but it's the tenants that benefits economically from it. And that means that it's a big discussion in the company, should we use money on this, since we're not getting the benefit of it. So we actually root for everyone that says we need some financial incentives from the one who makes the order, like we did in Norway for electrical cars. All the economic incentives were rooted towards us as consumers. We are making the decision, are we going to buy a fuel car or an electrical car? So we actually want the same kind of incentives in the energy sector, that our members actually can get some money to actually tip the decision point to actually make the decisions. And when we have come so far, we also need some change of the political framework, because today the framework is kind of ancient. It's made for another time, other energy sources and so on. And we actually have a good friend in NVE who actually tried to change this, but it takes time for the politicians to come there.
But are your members more ambitious than the government?
Yes, they are. They are kind of impatient. They want to do it, but now, you know, the economical crisis in the whole world, the money is not so easy to get to, so it's kind of stopped a bit due to the consequences of the war in Ukraine, for instance. So the financial incentives is more important now than last year, actually.
And of course, we won't dive too deep into the financial details, because that can lead to the Norwegian stiffness syndrome.
But
or
we want to,
sleepiness.
the surplus,
the thing is,
powerhouses,
your members have to write off an investment over 40 years, 50 years, the lifespan of a building. And in today's terms, with today's politics, it's not profitable.
No, it takes 150 years to pay back, and the lifetime for a solar panel is 30 years. So it's no economy in doing it, but they want to, and they do it as well. The big companies who have money, they do it, but they are often stopped. They need dispensation. Is that the right English word? From the regulations, and that's it should be opposite. It should be allowed to build surplus energy houses in large scales, but today it's not the common way to do it.
Anna Barnwell, Enova is kind of the answer to a lot of questions these days. We need to do the green transformation. Well, let's finance Enova even more over the national budget. So you've increased, your letter from your minister is widening for every year, and you're a lot of more tasks. What can we do within today's framework? I guess you have a lot of answers that not everyone knows.
Yeah, so I can explain a little bit about Enova and what we do, because it's a special policy measure. And our work, well, we basically manage the Climate and Energy Fund. And this fund, as you're talking about, gets more and more budget every year. So the goal with this fund is to create something we call lasting market change. And that means that the projects that we support aren't just about the kilowatt hours that you're saving in that one project, or maybe that one technology and the climate gas reductions there, but that these changes will be with the market over all the way until 2050 and maybe even further. And how we do this is that we invest in technology, or not invest, but we finance, subsidize technology projects that are maybe after FME. Actually, there's been tons of great projects coming out of both HighEFF and ZEN, where the projects have high risk. They need public financing to sort of get their legs off the ground here. And then we follow the technology all the way up until we can introduce it onto the market. And then something special is supposed to happen, because then we're supposed to have other policy measures that take over for Enova, because the goal here isn't that you're going to be subsidizing these projects forever. So Tone here, she's right. We need more public financing, but it's not a goal of Enova or actually Norsk Eiendom that you should have subsidizing of things like energy efficiency for 50 years. So the big question here, like you're asking, is what policy measures do we need, including Enova, that's going to secure energy efficiency in the long term. And Enova last year, Maren talked about it. It was a great year. We came up with some really great new measures, both for buildings and in industry, and there's going to be some new ones launched next week. So 2023 was great. We're doing really important things, but we really need to have these exciting changes coming in other policy measures. We need clear goals for both buildings and industry, and we need the regulations and legislation that follow up the work that Enova does.
I see you looking at Maren from NVA here, but we're going to hear
We
from
work a lot together.
Yeah, from Norsk Industry first. How many members do you have?
3,400 companies, 730,000 employees.
Yeah, so a lot of jobs. I asked Tone the same question. Are your members more ambitious than what's kind of realistic to achieve within today's politics, frameworks, financing measures?
I think it's a very good story about the process industry in Norway and absolutely ambitious companies. You heard Hydro, Lucia told about Elkem, etc. So, but it's I think it's important to understand for an industrial company that it's always competition. So you do compete either with your neighbor, kind of, or internationally. So they're very ambitious, and it's very important, I think, that Norway also looks into what are the support schemes, what's the policy going on in the European Union, most important, I guess. So,
But we're doing a transformation now. A side note, I remember the former rector of BI in Norway, Tor Helge Dokka. He came to Trondheim and he said, "You haven't understood anything, because what you do is you gather the startups in one building, and what you get then is a lot of pizza boxes. So if you want a value chain, you need customers and suppliers, as they do, for example, in Bergen, on the shore there. And what we're doing now is that we're not just handling the commercial side together, but we're also transforming the energy situation surrounding that value chain. How are we going to solve this in a way that we match the scale and the tempo?
I really appreciate today's arrangement, actually. This is one mean. I mean, the FME centers going for a 10-year period, industry, research, development, technology, both the development and implementation, addressing the barriers, all these discussions that's going on here. That's also, I think, why Norsk Industry kind of working is important, because we work on the industrial level. So we do have rules when you have competitors sitting in the same room, of course, but in the energy efficiency area, I don't think it's hardly any competition at all. It's about information, experience sharing, etc. So it's about. I'm very concerned about the upscaling to Enova, of course. That it's also important to what we're after. We're after CO2 emission reductions, simple cuts. You could have a kilowatt hour per kilowatt hour payback, some kind of risk reduction, as also Anders and Hydro was mentioning. And but it's about upscaling and simply using the energy more efficiently. And last point, I guess, it's a bit like Tone also, that there are some incentives who get the who get the advantage when you deliver district heating, all these kind of measurements. Yeah, I know Enova will tell. We're looking forward to next week, by the way. Yeah.
You mentioned risk, and a word often mentioned in connection to risk is regulation. And it was pointed out that you have the uncertainty now of what is the Norwegian regulations going to say, what's the EU going to say through their taxonomy, and how are they going to hand out carrots and sticks in order to implement their policies. How much of an uncertainty is there in the boardrooms in your member organizations on this? Do you expect NVA and Maren to just fix it?
I think I don't know all the boardrooms, obviously, but I do know the way of thinking, and that's the. If you look at kind of a major modification to increase the energy efficiency use, it's rebuilding like you do in your own house, I guess. You're doing a lot of room for room, all sorts of changes necessary. So the boards, they have to be sure about kind of a payback. Does this investment make sense? So obviously there's a discussion, but I think it's what I hear is a lot of license to operate, and they have high ambitions, and that's the way they want to do it. So we need a dialogue, of course, with the Norwegian authorities, which in general I think it's very good. But it's not a single party that can either dictate or set the rules.
What set of carrots and sticks are you handing out in the near future?
Yeah. Well, there's two important regulations coming up, and they are coordinated with the EU and the new Energy Efficiency Directive. Actually, they came already in 2018, and we have been working on them since 2020. So this is not new. And the government said in October that these regulations now will enter into force within possibly in 2024. So the first one is the obligation to do cost-benefit analysis of the possibilities of utilizing excess heat when planning facilities or upgrading facilities. And the other one is the requirement for energy mapping in large enterprises. And the purpose there is to identify energy efficiency potential and to implement the measures. So these two requirements will come during 2024, and they will hopefully set out a course for the large enterprises that use extensive electrical power and that produce a lot of excess heat.
I'm looking at the audience and their questions through Slido now, and there's a question here for you. Is it still seen as rationally to continue? Well, that's the start of a question, isn't it? To continue to use high-quality direct electric heating for heating rooms and water in new buildings? Is it still seen as rationally to continue to use high-quality direct electric heating for heating rooms and water in new buildings?
I think Tone will probably be better to answer that one than I am.
Well, the sun is here and coming, so I think we need to have more choices. The regulations and the technical regulations for buildings should kind of just embrace all the different sources, not only just say you must use district heating or you must use the electrical. Sun is also, or what do you call it, ground heating, or everything should be kind of embraced, and we just have to make the calculation of the emission and choose what's best for that building at that spot. Because it's different. Sometimes it's district heating, sometimes it's sun. But it should be kind of...
And one of the important tools that we manage is the energy label of the buildings. And it's up for this spring. The ministry is setting out the new regulation, the new and updated. And one important factor in this is that the house should have good quality, that it shouldn't leak out energy or heat, and that's kind of the main purpose. And then any type of energy that the household use for heating should be used efficiently.
On a personal note, houses from the 1980s, not necessarily good investments, but we're working on it. Tone, there's a question also throughout the audience, and inspired by hydro as well. Property owners, you say that the gains go to the customers, but they also have disadvantages if there's a low energy marking on how they do and perform their business. This is all connected to their competitiveness in the future. And now you don't view the tenants one by one, but you have to think, how can we create value chains where we both have closed circular economy gaps and everything, and everyone can share the same energy resources?
Well, we do agree, and we actually hope that the tenants could be more climate ambitious, actually. Because often they want to that the owner should kind of rebuild the whole office or anything. That's not very good use of money or emission. And of course, energy is kind of if we don't have energy efficient buildings, the tenants won't come in the future because it's too expensive. But who pays the upgrade? And the standard contracts between the tenants and the owner are now changed 2 years ago. So we're trying to get a more understanding that we have a common responsibility to have a kind of an energy efficient building, so that the tenants can have a low bill for their energy use, and the building itself is kind of interesting for many type of businesses. So we use the contract as a tool, getting also the tenants what they want, but also what the owner can afford.
Anna, your news feed just in the past week has been quite a monetary one. You've handed out support for large-scale projects, and that's we're going to continue to see that. I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine. What will the market look like when we're finished transforming?
Yeah, in energy efficiency, you think?
Yeah.
In buildings? Well, To follow up the question that someone in the audience asked, a very smart person, asked about what we think about using more waterborne or hydronic systems in buildings. I think, at least in buildings efficiency, we think, just like Maren, that we need buildings that have this climate house and they use as less energy as possible, but we do think that these energy sources need to be more flexible. So we think the transformation here has to do with more flexible energy sources in buildings. So Enov's put itself a little bit on a limb here and doesn't think that direct electricity should be the standard in warming up buildings. And another thing that we think this transformation has to be exemplified by is that industry also needs to be more flexible. So I think it's fantastic that we have HighEFF and ZEN here together, because if we don't see this across sectors, it's not, energy efficiency is not going to happen, and we can't talk about energy efficiency in buildings without talking about what hydro is doing. So I think the transformation will happen on very small levels, maybe in a 1980s house, but it's also going to happen in these big industry actors. And hopefully we'll have a flexible energy system in 2050 that actually will be able to make climate goals possible. That's what I hope for in the transformation.
And this is the venue where you get to share those hopes.
Yeah.
We heard from Hydro that energy is such a big part of the business case, right? How does this really affect your members? That they're handling all of these changes at once, energy being one of them. What's the implementation force really at now in the Norwegian business sector, as followed by the spikes in interest rates and everything you have to invest in, green and digital?
I think supplier industry and industry in general is very good at rapid changes and adaptation. I've worked a lot with the supplier industry, and especially on that part. They always come with new solutions and adapt. But for sure, it's very difficult times in a way. It's very uncertain, never been more uncertain, I guess. But for the energy system and the rationale being in Norway, working from Norway, for international companies to do technology development, research here, etc. It's tougher than before because we're used to have competitive power prices. That's really been good. It's 100% hydropower, more or less, so renewable, which is really a main and been an advantage. So Norway has reduced climate emissions 5% since 1990. We're after 55% politically set in 2030. That's 6 years. It's so short time, and we've done. So it's a long way, and the answer is more electricity. So and of course energy efficiency. So you have to, for sure you have to do both, but unless you get some more comfort with electricity prices, that's the main concern, absolutely. So and we here, and we really also want to encourage, I know that you do, but look into the project planning and final investment decisions. How is that? Could you do more parallel processes to short down the lead time, these things? Very important.
I heard the word fast track a lot from the European Commission. But is this because the lowest hanging fruit must be energy efficiency, isn't it? This is freeing up a space for others to get their renewable power in the wall.
The International Energy Agency, IEA, they say that if you are to reach the climate goals in 2050, 37% of the cuts will come from energy efficiency. 37%, so that's quite high. And with the UN sustainability goals, it says that energy efficiency needs to be doubled by 2030. And the new directive that EU adopted this fall says that 11% of the cuts should be taken in energy consumption and energy use. And we also see a falling curve in Europe on energy consumption. The Energy Efficiency Directive sets energy efficiency first as a principle, also in public sector, and for households and for industry. So the different measures that come with the directive will, to some extent, be implemented in Norway, and that process started already in 2020 because some of this was already adopted in 2018. So things will happen. But I'd like to say that we produce this big report almost annually called the Long-Term Power Market Analysis. And our predictions show that in 2040, if you have a scenario where energy efficiency reduces the consumption by 8 terawatt, then actually the price of electricity will go down with 4 øre in 2040. So energy efficiency also helps on the prices of power.
And of course, that makes you the most popular guys in terms of a just transition, isn't it? Because the households has been paying a lot for the reduced capacity in the past few years, and that's the real crisis, isn't it? So we'll have to go in for landing in a few minutes, but we have a few questions more from the audience. Are thermal batteries a solution for conserving and distributing heat when the plant is in a remote location? Who would like to answer that? Anna, you have sort of this going on?
It's definitely one of the things. Also, we had a really great talk from Hydro today, but industry needs power to survive, and we need a lot of solutions for industry, and these large centrally placed thermal batteries can be a part of the solution. Digitalization, automation are part of it. So yeah, I would say that's part of the solutions. We do a lot of support for these technologies that will enable that kind of work in industry.
We have a lot of dialogue with the districts, the communes around in Norway, and one of the things that we're setting up this year is a platform for cooperation with the communes, because all industry and all excess heating happens in a commune. So there's a planning authority there that we hope to work closer with and help.
Question that can go to both Tone and Petter. There's someone in the audience asking, what role can FMEs, especially the new ones, play in the development of these new green business models, and what can industrial partners do to support this? And I guess they're talking about the research center participation isn't just about the research results, but also that you open up a platform for collaboration. Tone?
Yeah, I think thanks for now. The FMEs have given us all the solutions. We know how to do it. The apple is not low-hanging, it's fallen onto the ground, I think. Just pick it up. But we need new business models for the network companies, because we in the building sector, we actually sometimes feel that those companies look at us as kind of enemies, because we want to withdraw from the net and be kind of self-providing with energy, with sun or whatever. But we are not the enemy. We're part of the solution. But they I don't know if it's true, but I think they may be afraid that they are losing customers. But there are a lot of battery factories and Google and everyone who's going to be new customers. So I don't think they need to be afraid. But maybe the new FMEs should try to look into good business models for the network companies, since buildings are trying to kind of give space for other businesses in the network.
And maybe you're also between the lines, or maybe wishful thinking or hearing, but should the public sector also take more part in these types of research collaboration? So for those from outside Norway, the municipalities own these net companies, the grid companies, and they also own the hydro power resources. And why should they incentivize change away from something that finances schools and healthcare in the municipalities?
I mean,
That's
we
a
all
tough
have-
question for
yeah.
the politicians, and you've
Of
been
course.
one in Oslo.
Yeah,
I
but
know.
I mean, if they mean something with the goals they have already set, they need actually to be a part of this,
Yeah.
because we will not have enough power or energy in a couple of years, so we need to do something, and we need to do it together. So everybody to the floor.
They want to be self-serving on power.
Yeah, but a few comments. First on thermal batteries, just to say that, we completely agree. A lot of member companies work in that area, so everything to stabilize the net. I agree, it's a lot about mandate, and the energy system is so different now than it was in the 1990s when the present energy law and the energy market design as showed by the Energy Commission. So there is a need to maybe the line operators can also do energy storage. I think we have to discuss these areas because the energy system is different, and you need a balance. And when you get all this renewable into the system, so you need the ground. From hydropower, for example. The question in a way is, well, should the FME do it? I don't know, but I think it's valuable discussions because there are so many present at the same place and the business model is changing. So I suppose, yes, I have low kind of R&D and technology development, that's very important. But at the same time, this is the barriers, as you say here, is somewhat different, I think, in a lot of the energy efficiency. So whatever can make it happen faster.
Hopefully we created some value, because our time is up, ladies and gentlemen. All good things must have an end, and that's our time, and we are going to replace you with the ones who started the session, Kristin and Petter. Thank you so much to our panel.
Thank you.
Give them a large hand of applause. Because after this, Petter and Kristin, is lunch, and I don't want to stand in the way of people's stomachs. What have we learned from this very engaging 90 minutes long session?
At least from the final panel, I think some words were said. Martin stated that 2023 and 2024 is game-changing, and that's big words, and I really appreciate that. But still, to actually change the game, we need to continue the efforts on this collaboration among R&D, industry, and also that the knowledge from these activities is being used by NV and also the politicians towards actually achieving the goals and targets of COP28.
We have learned that even if it is complex, it is perfectly doable, and a lot of it is not rocket science. We have a lot of the solutions, but of course we need more. We need more business models, as Tone has said. So, but first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that this is a potential, and we need to debate it more.
You both, I would imagine that you have exciting times leading up to the 11th of April, because you probably have applications in for new centers. Is there a large interest in taking part in the prolonging of these topics?
Definitely. We have 41 partners that has signed up for being part of the potentially new center. So we have a lot of unsolved challenges, even if we know a lot. And we are moving. Of course, we are not doing the same in the third center. We have had 7 ZEN and now ZEN Plus, but we are now looking into the energy and climate positive cities, because in cities is where we are. Most of us are living, and it's good conditions for both energy efficiency and other measures to...
Because you started with zero-emission buildings, and then there's zero-emission neighborhoods in smart cities.
We are expanding.
Now cities.
Yeah.
Then you take Manhattan, right? What's the interest like for you, Petter?
Yeah, for us, it's the existing partners of HighEFF are very interested in the continuation, but also addressing aspects that was talked about in the panel on the business models on who can actually utilize the energy which is available. So we now have more, let's say, the energy companies that are to be using the heat, maybe for district heating. And that brings us also, we are very complementary to the continuation of ZEN and seeing, how can industry even, in a better way, collaborate towards the integrated energy system for the future and to ensure that all the energy being used is actually being used in the end and not being wasted through the chimneys or as waste heat, but make it surplus heat.
What a splendid way of spending your workdays. Just solving problems, creating opportunities for everyone. Are you satisfied? Have we reached the goals for our session here?
I'm very happy with the session.
And you people? Sounds like it.
And thank you. Are you happy?
I'm very happy, and I'm also very hungry. So, since it's 1 minute past 12, we'll let you go. Thank you so much for taking part in this session with us.
Thank you.